Taejin Park stood in the arrival bay of Valor 9 Station, and he had never felt smaller in his entire life. Around him, cadets from dozens of alien species moved through the massive space. Some were 3 meters tall with scales that glinted like armor. Others had forearms ending in claws that could tear through steel. A few floated above the ground, their bodies crackling with natural electricity. Then there was Taejin, 1.7 meters tall, 2 arms, no claws, no scales, no natural weapons at all. Just a 19-year-old human wearing a crisp new uniform that suddenly felt like a costume. "Is that the human?" someone said in Galactic Standard. The translation implant in Taejin's ear made the words clear, but it could not hide the amusement in the speaker's voice. "It is. First of its kind here. Look how small it is. Why would the Academy accept such a weak species?" Taejin kept his face neutral and picked up his bag. He had heard worse during the selection process back on Earth. The Galactic Combat Academy had resisted accepting humans for years. They said Earth was too primitive, that humans were too fragile, that they had no place among the warrior races of the Allied systems. But Earth's government had pushed hard. They wanted humans to learn from the galaxy's best. They wanted representation in the military that protected 100 worlds. Eventually, the Academy agreed to accept one human as a test case. That human was Taejin. He followed the flow of cadets through security checkpoints and orientation stations. Everywhere he went, conversations stopped. Aliens stared. Some looked curious. Most looked dismissive. A few looked openly hostile. The orientation hall was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up 20 meters. Hundreds of cadets filled the space, sitting in sections divided by species. Taejin found an empty seat near the back. The chairs were too large for him, designed for bigger bodies. A massive figure appeared on the stage at the front. Commandant Thex was a Vorlan, a species known for leading the Allied system's military for generations. He had gray skin, red eyes, and a voice that boomed through the hall without any amplification. "Cadets," Thex began, "you are here because you represent the finest warriors your worlds can produce. For 400 years, this academy has trained the protectors of civilization. Our standards are absolute. Our methods are proven. Many of you will fail. Those who succeed will join the greatest military force in the galaxy." The cadets around Taejin sat straighter, their eyes fixed on the commandant. Taejin listened carefully, noting every word. "Tomorrow you will face your first combat trial," Thex continued. "This is not a test you can study for. This is a test of what you are, your strength, your speed, your natural abilities. The weak will be identified immediately." When Thex's eyes swept across the hall, they paused on Taejin for just a moment. There was doubt in those red eyes. Clear, unmistakable doubt. That night, in his assigned quarters, Taejin could not sleep. The room was too cold for his biology. The bed was too hard, but mainly his mind would not stop working. He kept replaying the looks he had received. The whispers, the doubt. He pulled up his datapad and reviewed what he knew about the Academy's combat trials. They were straightforward tests of ability. Cadets fought in controlled matches against opponents of similar size and strength. The goal was to demonstrate natural combat prowess. For species with 4 arms, that meant overwhelming opponents with multiple strikes. For species with armored scales, that meant absorbing damage while dealing crushing blows. For species with natural speed, that meant striking before opponents could react. For humans, Taejin had 2 arms, soft skin, and average speed compared to most species here. He had no natural advantages at all. The next morning came too quickly. The combat trial arena was a circular space 50 meters wide, surrounded by observation platforms where instructors and other cadets could watch. The floor was covered in a material that was hard enough to stand on, but soft enough to absorb falls without causing serious injury. Taejin was in the 3rd group of cadets to be tested. He watched the first 2 groups carefully. Each match followed the same pattern. 2 cadets entered the arena. They faced each other. At the signal, they fought with raw aggression, using whatever natural abilities they possessed. The matches ended when one cadet was knocked down or submitted. It was brutal and direct. There was no strategy, no technique beyond basic striking and grappling. Just power against power. "Cadet Park," a voice called through the arena speakers. "Enter the combat zone." Taejin stood and walked to the arena floor. His opponent was already waiting, a Crithian named Dren, who stood over 2 meters tall with 4 powerful arms and a chest like a barrel. Dren smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing meat. This will be quick, Dren said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Several cadets laughed. The instructor, a four-armed Crithian named Velmar, stood at the edge of the arena. Combat begins at the signal. Fight until one cadet yields or cannot continue. Begin. Dren rushed forward immediately, all four arms extended. Taejin tried to sidestep, but Dren was faster than he looked. Two arms grabbed Taejin's shoulders. Another slammed into his chest, knocking the air from his lungs. The fourth pushed his legs out from under him. Taejin hit the ground hard. Dren's knee pressed into his back, holding him down. Yield, Dren said. Taejin could not breathe properly. His ribs hurt. I yield, he managed to say. Match concluded, Velmar announced. Time, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. Taejin stood slowly, trying to ignore the pain and the humiliation. The observation platforms were silent except for a few more laughs. He walked off the arena floor with his head up, even though every instinct told him to run. Over the next week, Taejin faced 6 more combat trials against different opponents. He lost all of them. The longest match lasted 19 seconds. Most ended in less than 10. By the end of the week, he was a joke among the cadets. They called him the Fragile One in Galactic Standard. Some made bets on how quickly his next match would end. Even cadets from species considered weak by Academy standards could defeat him easily. Only one person showed him any kindness. A cadet named Lyra from the Helian species, who were peaceful traders rather than warriors. Lyra had been struggling too, though not as badly as Taejin. Why did you come here? Lyra asked one evening in the dining hall. They sat alone at a table while other cadets filled the space with loud conversation and laughter. My world wants us to learn, Taejin said, to be part of the Allied systems properly, and someone has to be first. But they are destroying you. Every day another defeat, another humiliation. Taejin looked at his hands, soft, weak hands compared to the claws and talons around him. Then I need to find another way. What other way? The trials test what you are. You cannot change your biology. No, Taejin agreed. But maybe I can change how I fight. That night, Taejin requested access to the simulation rooms. These were training spaces where cadets could practice combat scenarios using holographic technology. Most cadets used them to hone their natural abilities against virtual opponents. Taejin had different plans. He pulled up the Academy's entire combat database and began to study. Not just the techniques, but the patterns. How every species fought the same way. How they always relied on their natural strengths. How they never adapted or changed tactics mid-fight. He watched hundreds of matches, taking notes on everything. The Crithians always used their forearms in the same sequence. The Vorlans always charged straight ahead, using their size as a weapon. The Skiran always waited for their opponent to attack first, then countered with speed. Every species had patterns. Predictable patterns. And if something was predictable, Taejin thought maybe it could be beaten. He spent hours in the simulation room that night, and every night that followed. While other cadets slept or socialized, Taejin worked. He programmed opponents and tried different approaches. Most failed. He lost to the simulations just as badly as he lost in real matches. But slowly, very slowly, he began to notice something. When he did not fight the way the simulations expected, when he moved in unusual patterns or used tactics the database did not recognize, the virtual opponents hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, but they hesitated. In that hesitation, Taejin saw possibility. 2 weeks into his academy training, Instructor Velmar pulled him aside after another failed combat trial. Cadet Park, you are the worst performer in your class, Velmar said bluntly. Every evaluation shows you are not suited for combat. I recommended rejecting your application. I still believe that was correct. Yes, instructor, Taejin said, keeping his voice level. You have 4 more weeks before the first major assessment. If you cannot show significant improvement, you will be expelled. Do you understand? I understand, instructor. Velmar studied him with all 4 eyes. You do not have the strength to be here. Why do you persist? Taejin met his gaze. Because strength is not the only way to win, instructor. Velmar's mandibles clicked together, the Crithian equivalent of a dismissive laugh. In combat, strength is everything. That is the first rule of warfare. Maybe where you come from, Taejin said quietly. But humans have different rules. Then your rules are wrong, Velmar said. 4 weeks, cadet. Prove me wrong or leave. That night, Taejin received an encrypted message on his datapad. It was D.O. The files from Minho Kang changed everything for Taejin. Each night, after failing another combat trial during the day, he would return to his quarters and study human warfare. Not the simple, direct combat the Academy taught, but something far more complex. He learned about generals who won battles by retreating, about armies that defeated larger forces by refusing to fight fair, about warriors who used terrain, weather, psychology, and deception as weapons more powerful than any sword. The Academy taught that combat was about being stronger than your opponent. Humanity's history taught that combat was about making your strength irrelevant. Tae-jin spent his nights reading and his early mornings in the simulation rooms, testing these ancient human tactics against virtual opponents. The simulations were programmed with standard Academy combat doctrine. They expected direct confrontation. They assumed both sides would fight honestly. When Tae-jin programmed a scenario where he retreated, the virtual opponent would chase. When he feinted left but moved right, the opponent would commit to defending the wrong direction. When he used the environment to hide or create obstacles, the opponent would stand confused. These were concepts the galaxy had never developed. Why would they? Every species had natural advantages. Combat was about using those advantages to overpower the enemy. Deception was not just dishonorable, it was unnecessary. But Tae-jin had no natural advantages. So he would use the advantages the galaxy did not understand. 3 weeks into training during morning drills, Instructor Velmar announced a new exercise. "Today we practice tactical awareness," Velmar said to the assembled cadets. "You will enter the training grounds in pairs. One cadet will hide, the other will search. 5 minutes. Simple exercise." The cadets paired off by species as they usually did. Tae-jin stood alone until Velmar pointed at a Vorlan cadet named Crix. "Crix, you will pair with the human." Crix looked unhappy, but nodded. He was smaller than most Vorlans, only about 2 meters tall, but still nearly half a meter taller than Tae-jin. "I will hide first," Crix said when they reached their assigned section of the training grounds. The area was filled with obstacles, walls, and barriers designed to simulate urban terrain. "Understood," Tae-jin said. Crix moved to the far end of the area and positioned himself behind a large barrier. From there he could see multiple approaches. His gray skin blended slightly with the concrete-like walls, but he was still fairly visible if you knew where to look. When the timer started, Tae-jin walked directly to Crix's position and tagged him in 30 seconds. "How?" Crix demanded. "I chose the best defensive position." "You chose the position that gave you the best view," Tae-jin explained. "That means it also gave me the best view of you. And you positioned yourself where you could see the most common approach paths, so I knew you would be somewhere watching those paths." Crix's red eyes narrowed. "That is logical. Now you hide." Tae-jin moved into the training ground. He did not choose the position with the best view. Instead, he found a narrow gap between two walls that was uncomfortable and awkward. He squeezed into it, positioning himself so he was completely hidden from all approach angles. Then he waited. The 5-minute timer expired. Crix had not found him. Velmar arrived looking irritated. "Cadet Park, reveal yourself." Tae-jin emerged from his hiding spot. Several cadets who had finished their own exercises had gathered to watch. They looked surprised. "That position is terrible," Velmar said. "You could not see anything. You could not defend it if discovered. You would be trapped." "Yes, instructor," Tae-jin said. "But I was not discovered. You were hiding like prey, not a warrior. I was hiding like someone who wanted to win the exercise, instructor." Some of the watching cadets made sounds of amusement. Velmar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Combat is not about hiding, Cadet Park. It is about facing your enemy with strength." "Respectfully, instructor, the exercise was not combat. It was tactical awareness. The goal was not to fight, but to avoid being found." "You twist the purpose," Velmar said. "But you completed the exercise successfully. Dismissed." As Tae-jin walked away, Crix followed him. "That was clever," Crix said quietly. "I would not have thought of hiding somewhere with no advantages." "Having no advantages means your enemy cannot predict where you will be," Tae-jin said. "They look for positions that make sense to them. So you choose positions that do not make sense. That is strange thinking," Crix said. But he did not say it mockingly. He said it like he was considering something new. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. During the daily combat trials, Tae-jin was matched against a Skiran cadet named Vex. The Skirans were fast, with reflexes 3 times quicker than humans. They were not particularly strong, but their speed made them dangerous. As always, Taijin studied his opponent before the match. Vex had the same pattern every Skirin used. Wait for the opponent to attack. Dodge at the last possible moment. Counterstrike while the opponent was off balance. It worked because most species relied on power. They committed fully to their attacks, expecting to overwhelm their opponent. When the Skirin dodged, the attacker had no way to recover quickly. But what if the initial attack was not meant to land? The match began. Taijin moved forward, but not in a straight charge like most opponents. He approached at an angle, then suddenly shifted direction. Vex reacted, moving to counter where Taijin appeared to be going. But Taijin was not going there. He had shifted his weight to make it look like he was moving that way, but his actual movement was elsewhere. It was a feint, a deception. Vex tried to adjust, but was already committed to the wrong direction. For just a moment, less than a second, Vex was out of position. Taijin struck. Not with power, he did not have enough for that to matter, but with precision, hitting exactly where Vex was unbalanced. Vex stumbled. Taijin did not try to follow up with strength. Instead, he kept moving, staying in positions where Vex's speed was less useful. Close quarters where there was no room to build momentum. Angles where Vex had to constantly adjust stance. It was not elegant. It was not powerful, but it was working. 30 seconds into the match, Vex made a mistake. Overcommitted to a strike, Taijin sidestepped, grabbed Vex's extended arm and used the Skirin's own momentum to pull him off balance. They both fell, but Taijin had anticipated the fall. He rolled with it, ending up in a position where he could lock Vex's arm. "Yield," Taijin said. Vex hesitated, clearly shocked. Then, "I yield." Match concluded, Velmar announced. His voice sounded strange. Time 37 seconds. Victor, Cadet Park. The observation area was silent. Completely silent. Taijin stood and offered his hand to help Vex up. The Skirin stared at the hand for a moment, then took it. "What was that?" Vex asked. "That was not fighting with strength," Taijin said. "That was fighting with thinking." The silence in the observation area broke. Cadets started talking all at once. Some looked interested. Many looked confused. A few, including Dren, looked angry. "That was luck," Dren announced loudly. The Skirin made an error. The human did nothing but survive until that error happened. "Maybe," Taijin said, meeting Dren's eyes. "Or maybe I created the error." Dren's forearms tensed. "You think you could defeat me with such tricks?" "I do not know," Taijin said honestly, "but I would like to try." The observation area erupted in excited noise. Cadets loved challenges between rivals. Velmar raised one of his hands for silence. If Cadet Dren wishes to challenge Cadet Park officially, he may submit the proper request. For now, training continues. But everyone knew the challenge would come. It was just a question of when. That evening, as Taijin was leaving the training areas, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a human woman, a few years older than him, wearing a uniform he did not recognize. "Cadet Park," she said in Korean, which surprised him. "I am Hana Choi. I arrived this afternoon." Another human? Taijin switched to Korean as well, relieved to speak his native language. "They did not tell me anyone else was coming." "They did not tell me about you either until I got here," Hana said. "Apparently Earth decided one human was not enough. They want more representation. So here I am. You will face the same problems I have," Taijin warned. "The Academy does not think we belong here." "I saw your match today," Hana said. "The one you won. That was not Academy doctrine." "No, that was human doctrine," Hana smiled. "Good, because I did not come here to fight like them. I came here to show them how we fight." Over the next week, Taijin and Hana trained together. She was faster than him, with better reflexes. He was slightly stronger, and had been at the Academy longer, so he knew the systems better. Together, they practiced the concepts from the files Minho Kang had sent. They practiced feints and deceptions. They practiced using terrain and obstacles in ways the Academy never taught. They practiced tactics where the goal was not to be stronger but to make strength irrelevant. Other cadets noticed. A few made jokes, but others, like Crix and Vex, started watching their training sessions with interest. "Why do you hide your movements?" Crix asked one evening. "Why not be direct?" "Because being direct only works if you are stronger," Hana explained. "We are not stronger, so we must be smarter." "But combat is about honor," Vex said, "about testing yourself against your enemy fairly." Dren charged across the arena floor with devastating speed. His forearms moved in the standard Crithian pattern: high left, low right, middle right. It was designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer number of attacks. Tae-jin did not try to block. Instead, he moved backward at an angle, just barely staying ahead of Dren's reach. To the watching cadets, it looked like he was retreating in fear, but Tae-jin was not afraid. He was measuring Dren's charging attack had momentum. That momentum carried him forward 3 full steps before he could adjust course. Tae-jin had watched dozens of Dren's matches. Every time that charge was the same. 3 steps, then reassess. On the 3rd step, Tae-jin suddenly changed direction. Instead of continuing backward, he moved toward Dren, but to the side. Dren tried to adjust mid-stride, but his momentum was already committed. His leftmost arm swung through empty air where Tae-jin had been. For a fraction of a second, Dren was overextended. Tae-jin did not try to strike him. He was not strong enough for that to matter. Instead, he pushed against Dren's overextended arm, adding to the momentum instead of fighting it. Dren stumbled slightly, caught off balance. It was not much, but it was something. Dren recovered quickly, spinning to face Tae-jin. His mandibles clicked in annoyance. "You run like prey," Dren said. "I move with purpose," Tae-jin replied calmly. Dren attacked again, but this time he was more controlled. He did not charge blindly. Instead, he advanced steadily, using all 4 arms to create a wall of attacks that was nearly impossible to avoid. Tae-jin gave ground, but he was not just retreating randomly. He was moving toward the edge of the arena where the observation platforms created a natural boundary. Dren saw this and smiled. "You trap yourself, human." But Tae-jin had studied the arena carefully. The edge was not a trap for him. It was a tool. When Dren attacked again, expecting Tae-jin to have nowhere to go, Tae-jin used the boundary wall. He pushed off it, suddenly moving at an unexpected angle. In the open arena, Dren's forearms gave him control over multiple approach vectors. But with the wall behind Tae-jin, some of those vectors were blocked. Dren had to adjust his pattern, and when patterns changed, mistakes happened. Dren's upper right arm struck the wall as Tae-jin moved. The impact was not hard enough to injure, but it disrupted Dren's rhythm. Tae-jin was already moving again, staying close to Dren's side where only 2 arms could reach him easily instead of all 4. The watching cadets were silent now. This was not how fights were supposed to go. Tae-jin should have been overwhelmed in seconds. Instead, the match had lasted over a minute and Tae-jin had not been hit once. Dren was getting frustrated. Tae-jin could see it in how his movements became sharper, more aggressive. Frustration was good. Frustrated fighters made mistakes. "Stand and fight," Dren shouted, swinging all 4 arms in a wide pattern meant to catch Tae-jin no matter which way he moved. But Tae-jin did not move to either side. He dropped low, almost to the ground, and the 4 arms passed over his head. Before Dren could adjust, Tae-jin swept his leg against Dren's ankle. It should not have worked. Dren was far too heavy and too stable, but he was also off balance from his wide swing, with all his weight on his front legs. The sweep did not knock him down, but it made him stumble. Tae-jin rolled away and back to his feet. 2 minutes now. The arena was so quiet you could hear the air circulation systems. Dren's confidence was cracking. Tae-jin could see it. Every Crithian Dren had ever fought stood and traded blows until the stronger one won. That was the way of things. But Tae-jin was not trading blows. He was doing something Dren had no experience with. He was fighting smart. "You cannot win by running," Dren said, breathing harder now. Chasing Tae-jin around the arena was tiring him. "I am not trying to win by running," Tae-jin said. "I am trying to win by making you tired." Dren charged again, this time with pure rage fueling his movements. No technique, no control. Just fury, and that was exactly what Tae-jin had been waiting for. Angry fighters telegraphed their intentions. Dren was so focused on catching Tae-jin that he stopped protecting himself. When Dren swung with his upper arms, his midsection was exposed. When he reached low, his head was exposed. Tae-jin waited for the right moment. Dren lunged forward with all 4 arms extended. Tae-jin sidestepped, grabbed one of those extended arms, and pulled while turning his body. It was a move from human martial arts, using the opponent's momentum against them. Dren's own force carried him past Tae-jin. With his balance already compromised and Tae-jin pulling on his arm, Dren could not stop himself. He fell forward, crashing to the arena floor with a sound that echoed through the space. Tae-jin immediately moved on top of him. using his full body weight to pin two of Dren's arms while trapping one of his legs. It was not a strong position, not really, but it did not have to be strong. It just had to make it difficult for Dren to stand up. Dren thrashed, trying to use his superior strength to throw Tae-jin off. But every time he moved, Tae-jin adjusted his position, using angles and leverage instead of matching strength against strength. 30 seconds passed with Dren on the ground, unable to rise. His breathing was heavy now. The fight had lasted over 3 minutes, and he had spent most of it chasing Tae-jin while swinging with everything he had. He was exhausted. Yield, Tae-jin said quietly so only Dren could hear. You fought well, but this is over. Never, Dren gasped, still struggling. Then we will stay here until you cannot move at all, Tae-jin said. But that will be more embarrassing for you than yielding now. Dren struggled for another 10 seconds. Then his body went still. I yield, he said, the words barely audible. Tae-jin immediately released him and stood, offering his hand. Dren stared at it for a long moment, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Then he took it and pulled himself up. Match concluded, Velmar announced. His voice sounded strange, like he was not sure what he had just witnessed. Victor, Cadet Park. For 3 full seconds, the arena was completely silent. Then the observation platforms erupted. Not with laughter this time. With shock, confusion, argument. Some cadets were shouting that it was not a fair victory. Others were defending Tae-jin. A few were simply staring in disbelief. Commandant Thek stood from his observation seat. His red eyes were fixed on Tae-jin. Cadet Park, his voice boomed through the arena. Report to my office immediately following medical clearance. That did not sound good. Medical clearance was quick. Tae-jin had a few bruises, but nothing serious. Dren had no physical injuries, but his pride was devastated. He left the medical bay without looking at anyone. Tae-jin walked to the commandant's office with his heart pounding. He had won, but had he won the wrong way? Would they expel him for not fighting honorably? Commandant Thex's office was large and decorated with weapons from dozens of worlds. The commandant sat behind a desk that looked more like a tactical display. Sit, Thex commanded. Tae-jin sat. Thex studied him in silence for a long moment. I have been training warriors for 70 years, he finally said. I have seen every combat style in the Allied systems. What you did out there, he paused. That was not combat as we understand it. No, sir, Tae-jin agreed. It was combat as humans understand it. You did not once try to overpower your opponent. You avoided direct confrontation at every opportunity. You used deception, misdirection, and manipulation. Yes, sir. Many instructors are calling for your expulsion. They say you fought dishonorably, that you won through trickery rather than skill. Tae-jin took a breath. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. With respect, sir, I won because I had skill. Just not the kind of skill the Academy teaches. You judge combat by one standard, physical superiority. But that standard assumes all opponents are roughly equal in capability. Humans are not equal to the other species here. We are weaker, slower, less durable. If we fight by your rules, we lose every time. So you fight without rules? No, sir. We fight with different rules. Rules that do not require us to be stronger. Rules based on thinking, adapting, and using our enemy's strengths against them. Thex's eyes narrowed. And you believe these rules have a place in the Academy? I believe, sir, that if the Academy only teaches one way to fight, then anyone who learns a different way will have an advantage. If all your warriors think the same, fight the same, and expect the same from their enemies, then those warriors will be vulnerable to enemies who do not think the same. You suggest our doctrine is flawed? I suggest it is incomplete, sir. Thex stood and walked to the window overlooking the training areas. For a long time he said nothing. You are not expelled, Cadet Park, he finally said, but you will be watched closely. Many here believe what you do is dangerous. They fear it will corrupt our warriors, make them weak and dishonest. And what do you believe, sir? Thex turned to face him. I believe you have introduced something into this academy that we have never encountered. I do not know yet if it is valuable or destructive, but I intend to find out. Dismissed. Tae-jin left the office not sure if he had just won a great victory or created a terrible problem. News of the duel spread rapidly through the academy. By that evening, every cadet knew that the human had defeated the top Crithian through unusual methods. Reactions were divided sharply. Many cadets were angry. They felt Tae-jin had cheated somehow, even though he had broken no rules. The victory over the Krithian squad changed everything. Within days, other cadets started approaching Tae-jin's squad, asking questions. Not everyone and not openly, but in quiet corners of the training facilities, conversations happened. "How did you know they would move to the center?" one cadet asked. "We did not know," Hana explained. "We predicted, based on how they always move, how the academy teaches everyone to fight. Control the high-value objective through superior force. It is predictable." "So you use their training against them?" "Exactly." The academy's instructors noticed the change. They scheduled more team exercises, pairing Tae-jin's squad against increasingly difficult opponents. The hope was that eventually, raw power would overcome the humans' unusual tactics. But each exercise taught Tae-jin's squad more about how to fight smart, and each victory made more cadets question what they had been taught. In the fourth team exercise, they faced a squad with mixed species, all chosen for their aggressive combat styles. The scenario was an urban environment with multiple objectives. The opposing squad split up to control multiple points, using their strength to hold positions. Tae-jin's squad did not try to take those positions. Instead, they moved between them, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could respond effectively. They never held ground. They simply denied the enemy from holding it securely. By the end, the opposing squad had expended all their energy defending positions, while Tae-jin's squad, relatively fresh, completed the actual objective in a completely different area. After that exercise, even some of the instructors started paying attention differently, not with hostility anymore, but with uncomfortable curiosity. Instructor Velmar pulled Tae-jin aside after training one day. "Your methods," Velmar said slowly, "are spreading. Other cadets attempt to copy your tactics. Most fail because they do not truly understand." "It is not about the individual tactics, instructor," Tae-jin said. "It is about the mindset, thinking of combat as a problem to solve rather than a contest of strength. This mindset makes warriors weaker, less willing to face direct confrontation. No, instructor, it makes warriors more complete. A warrior who can only fight one way is vulnerable to anyone who fights differently." Velmar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The war games approach in 3 weeks. The largest exercise of the term. 20 squads compete in a prolonged simulation. Some exercises last days. It tests everything: combat ability, strategy, endurance, adaptability. I am aware, instructor. Your squad will compete. But you should know that many instructors are hoping you will fail spectacularly. They want to prove that your methods only work in small, controlled exercises, not in real warfare. And what do you hope, instructor?" Velmar was quiet for a moment. "I hope to see if your methods truly have value, or if they are merely tricks that work once before being countered." It was the most honest thing Velmar had ever said to him. The War Games were the Academy's premier event. 20 squads, multiple environments, no single objective, but rather a complex web of missions, resources, and tactical opportunities. Squads earned points by completing objectives, eliminating opponents, and controlling key positions. The exercise lasted 3 full days. Every year, the strongest squads won, usually teams of Krithians or Vorlans, species with natural advantages in prolonged combat. Tae-jin's squad studied previous war games carefully. They identified patterns. The winning squads always fought for control of high-value positions. They engaged in direct combat frequently. They moved openly, confident in their strength. "We will not do any of that," Tae-jin told his squad during their planning session. "Then how do we win?" Lyra asked. "By changing what winning means," Hana said, understanding immediately. "We cannot score the most points through direct objectives. We are not strong enough. But what if we prevent the strong squads from scoring? Deny them the resources they need," Vex added, catching on. "Force them to waste energy looking for us instead of completing objectives. Make them fight our kind of battle, not theirs," Crix finished. Tae-jin smiled. His squad was thinking like humans now. They spent the next 3 weeks preparing, not by building strength or practicing direct combat, but by studying the War Games environment, planning multiple contingency strategies, and practicing the kind of coordination that made human tactics work. A new face appeared at the Academy during this time. Ji-won Lee, a tactical analyst from Earth's military, arrived as an observer. Officially, she was there to evaluate human cadet performance. Unofficially, she was there to help. "Earth is watching," Ji-won told Tae-jin and Hana during a private meeting. You two are showing the galaxy what humans can do, but many back home are worried. They fear if you fail at the war games, it will set back human integration by years. No pressure then, Hana said dryly. Ji-won smiled. I reviewed your previous exercises. Your tactical thinking is sound, but the war games are different. Longer duration, more chaos, stronger opponents. You will need to push your concepts further than before. How? Taejin asked. By doing something no squad has ever done in war games history, Ji-won said. Do not just fight differently. Change the nature of the game itself. She spent hours with them introducing more advanced concepts, night operations, which the Academy never trained for because most species had excellent low-light vision. Psychological operations making your enemy doubt and fear, false intelligence and misdirection on a large scale. You will be accused of cheating, Ji-won warned. Of fighting dishonorably. Are you prepared for that? We have been accused of that since we arrived, Taejin said. But we have not broken any rules. We just play by different ones. The day of the war games arrived. 20 squads gathered in the preparation area. The environment was a mixed terrain zone. Urban areas, forests, hills, and open fields. Supply caches were scattered throughout. Objectives would be announced periodically throughout the 3 days. Taejin's squad drew their starting position, a forest area on the eastern edge of the zone. Not a particularly valuable position, which was fine. They did not plan to hold positions anyway. As the squads moved into the zone, several things became clear. The strongest teams immediately headed for the urban center, expecting major objectives there. Medium-strength teams took positions in the hills, which offered tactical advantages. Weaker teams scattered to the less desirable areas. Taejin's squad entered the forest and seemed to disappear. For the first 6 hours, they did not engage anyone. They did not attempt any objectives. They simply moved through the forest, setting up supply caches in hidden locations and observing the other squads' movements. By nightfall on the first day, the strong squads were already accumulating points. Dren's squad, one of the favorites, had completed 3 objectives and eliminated 1 opposing squad. The instructors watching from the control center were dismissive of Squad 7's performance. The humans hide again, one commented. They will wait until it is too late, then complain the game was unfair. But Admiral Ren, a fleet commander who had come to observe the war games, watched Taejin's squad with interest. They are not hiding, she said. They are preparing. Night fell completely. Most squads settled into defensive positions, planning to resume operations at dawn. The Academy had never emphasized night operations because nearly all species could see well enough in darkness, but humans had learned to fight at night on Earth. They understood that darkness was not just an obstacle, it was a weapon. Taejin's squad moved. They struck at supply caches other squads had claimed, taking resources and disappearing before a response could be organized. They sabotaged positions, not by attacking directly but by making them unusable. They spread false information over the communication networks, sending squads to wrong locations. By dawn of the second day, multiple squads were confused and disorganized. Resources they thought were secure had been raided. Positions they thought were safe had been compromised, and no one had seen Squad 7 engage in a single direct combat. This is not combat, one instructor protested. This is sabotage and tricks. This is war, Admiral Ren corrected. And war is not fair. On the second day, the objectives became more complex. Control points that needed to be held for extended periods, resources that needed to be transported, challenges that required multiple squads to compete directly. The strong squads were still ahead on points, but they were also tired, frustrated, and scattered. Chasing Squad 7 at night had wasted their energy. Now they had to compete for objectives while being uncertain if Squad 7 would strike at their supply lines again. Taejin's squad continued to avoid direct confrontation. When a strong squad moved toward an objective, Squad 7 would create a diversion elsewhere, forcing them to split their forces. When squads tried to track them, they found false trails and empty camps. It was warfare through attrition and psychology, making the enemy expend resources, question their information, and doubt their safety. By the end of the second day, something remarkable appeared in the point standings. Squad 7 was not in first place, but they were in 5th, not by earning the most points, but by preventing other squads from earning points while carefully selecting low-risk objectives to complete. More importantly, the top squads were exhausted. They had been fighting constantly for 2 days, never able to fully rest. The weeks following the war games were among the most turbulent in the Academy's 400-year history. The Council of Allied Systems convened an emergency session to discuss Admiral Wren's recommendations. News of the human cadets' victory spread across dozens of worlds, creating intense debate about military doctrine and tradition. At the Academy itself, the division was sharp. Nearly half the instructors signed a formal protest, demanding that Taijin and Hana be expelled for corrupting military values. They argued that accepting human methods would weaken future warriors, making them rely on tricks instead of true combat skill. But the other half saw something different. They saw vulnerability exposed. They saw the future changing. Commandant Thex called a special assembly of all cadets and instructors. The massive hall was packed, tensions running high. When Thex took the stage, the room fell silent. "The council has made its decision," Thex announced. His voice was neutral, revealing nothing. After reviewing the war games results, consulting with military leadership across the Allied systems, and analyzing centuries of combat doctrine, they have concluded the following. He paused, and the silence deepened. The Galactic Combat Academy will undergo curriculum reform. Human tactical concepts will be integrated into standard training, alongside traditional methods. This integration will begin immediately. The hall erupted. Half the room shouted in approval. The other half shouted in protest. Thex raised his hands for silence, but it took several minutes for order to return. This was not an easy decision. Thex continued once the noise subsided. Many argued against it. They said we are abandoning tradition, dishonoring our warrior heritage and weakening our forces. These concerns were heard and considered. But the council also heard something else. They heard that our enemies will not wait for us to be ready. That warfare evolves. That a military force that cannot adapt is a military force that will eventually fail. He turned to look directly at Taijin and Hana. Cadet Park, Cadet Choi approach. They walked to the stage, very aware of hundreds of eyes watching them. Some of those eyes were friendly. Many were not. "You came to this academy as representatives of humanity," Thex said. "You were dismissed, mocked, and underestimated. You could have accepted failure and returned home. Instead, you challenged everything we taught. You proved that our understanding of warfare was limited." He paused, then did something unprecedented. He saluted them. "On behalf of the Galactic Combat Academy, I apologize for our prejudice. We judged your species by our standards and found you lacking. We did not consider that you might have standards of your own that we lacked." The hall was absolutely silent now. "Effective immediately," Thex continued. "You are both promoted to the rank of tactical instructor. You will work with our senior staff to develop the new curriculum. You will teach other cadets the concepts you have demonstrated. You will help reshape how this academy prepares warriors for an uncertain future." Someone in the audience started clapping, then another. Within moments, more than half the hall was applauding. The other half remained silent, but they did not protest. Change had officially arrived at the academy. The next few months were intense. Taijin and Hana worked with instructors to develop new training modules. It was difficult work, made harder by the resistance they faced from traditionalists. "How can we teach cadets to hide?" one instructor demanded during a curriculum meeting. "Warriors face their enemies with honor, not deception." "Honor does not win wars when you are dead," Hana replied bluntly. "And deception is not dishonorable. It is intelligent. Would you rather lose honorably or win through superior tactics? There should not be a choice between honor and victory." "In an ideal galaxy, perhaps," Taijin said. "But the galaxy is not ideal. Our enemies will use every advantage. We must be prepared for that." The breakthrough came when Admiral Wren provided classified intelligence. A hostile force called the Dominion was expanding toward Allied systems territory. The Dominion was known for overwhelming military force and brutal efficiency. "The Dominion fights like we do," Wren explained to the assembled instructors. "They rely on superior firepower and direct assault. Ship to ship, soldier to soldier, they simply try to be stronger than their opponents. And it works because most civilizations fight the same way." "Then how do human tactics help against them?" an instructor asked. "Because if we fight the Dominion on their terms, we lose," Wren said simply. "They have more ships, more soldiers, more resources. Trying to match them in direct combat is suicide. But if we fight them on our terms, using methods they have never encountered, we have a chance. She activated a tactical display showing Dominion invasion patterns. They are predictable. They follow the same strategies every time. They overwhelm defensive positions through sheer force. They expect their enemies to meet them head-on and lose. What happens when the enemy does not meet them head-on? Taejin asked, studying the display. We do not know, Ren admitted, because no one has tried. Until now. That intelligence changed the conversation. Suddenly, the debate was not about honor versus tactics. It was about survival. A simulation was designed to test the concept. The Academy's best traditional combat units would defend against a simulated Dominion invasion, using conventional doctrine. Then human-trained units would attempt the same scenario using adaptive tactics. The results were sobering. Traditional units lasted an average of 4 hours against the Dominion simulation before being overwhelmed. They fought bravely, honorably, and were completely destroyed. The human-trained units lasted significantly longer by refusing to engage where the Dominion was strongest. They used guerrilla tactics, struck supply lines, and denied the enemy the direct confrontation they relied on. They did not win decisively, but they survived and inflicted disproportionate losses. This is the difference, Thex told the assembled academy after reviewing the simulation results. Traditional doctrine produces warriors who fight well and die honorably. Human doctrine produces warriors who survive and adapt. We need both. The new curriculum took shape. Basic combat training remained focused on traditional strength-based methods, but advanced training now included human concepts, tactical deception, asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, and adaptive strategy. Taejin's first official class as an instructor had 20 cadets from 10 different species. Most came voluntarily, curious about human methods. A few were ordered to attend by instructors who wanted to understand what their enemies might learn. Welcome, Taejin said, as the cadets settled into the training room. Everything you learned about combat until now is still valuable. Strength matters. Speed matters. Natural abilities matter, but they are not everything. He activated a display showing 2 fighters. One was massive and powerful. The other was small and weak. Traditional doctrine says the large fighter wins, and if both fighters follow traditional doctrine, that is true. The strong overpower the weak. But what if the weak fighter does not follow those rules? He ran a simulation. The small fighter avoided direct combat, used terrain, created distractions, and eventually won by making the large fighter exhaust itself chasing shadows. This is dishonorable, a Crithian cadet said. No, Taejin replied. This is survival. Honor is valuable, but honor that gets you killed serves no purpose. The goal is to win while minimizing your own losses. Sometimes that means fighting directly. Sometimes it means fighting indirectly. The best warriors understand both approaches and choose whichever fits the situation. He spent the next hour teaching them concepts that had never been part of academy training. How to read an enemy's patterns and exploit them. How to use false information to mislead opponents. How to turn environmental factors into weapons. Some cadets resisted. Others were fascinated. By the end of the class, even the skeptics had to admit they had never thought about combat this way before. Hana's classes focused on psychological warfare and squad coordination. She taught cadets how to make enemies doubt themselves, how to create fear and confusion, and how to coordinate complex tactics that required thinking as a unit, rather than as individuals. Most species here are stronger than humans individually, Hana explained to her class. But humans learned long ago that coordinated groups of weak individuals can defeat strong individuals who fight alone. We call it combined arms tactics. Each member covers another's weakness. Over the following months, the changes became visible throughout the academy. Training exercises became more complex, requiring cadets to adapt to unusual situations. Traditional combat drills were supplemented with scenarios that had no straightforward solutions. Some cadets struggled with the changes. They had been raised in cultures where direct confrontation was everything. Learning to think differently was painful, but others thrived. Cadets from species previously considered weak in combat discovered they could be effective through intelligence and coordination. Species known for strength learned to use their power more efficiently by combining it with strategy. The most dramatic demonstration came 6 months after the curriculum changes began. A new academy-wide exercise pitted reformed squads against traditional squads in a complex scenario. The reformed squads dominated. Not because they were stronger, but because they were more adaptable. They used traditional tea,